I've read a lot of Lenora Bell. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be doing another one of my author guide videos. If you guys haven't watched them yet, or if you guys are new to my channel, I read a lot of historical romances and I tend to binge read a lot of historical romances from one specific author. Now, if you guys also didn't know, me and my friends Jessica from Peace Love Books and Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers love to host this readathon called the Historical Romance Readathon. And during our first ever meeting last year, Lenora Bell was actually really kind enough to host a giveaway with us, and she was going to give away one of her latest books in one of her series. And then I never read Lenora before, but I owned a lot of her books and I never really gave her a try until this year, where I actually binge read all her books and I've read everything that she's ever published, and it's just so good. It's like she is literally one of my favorite new authors. So let's get started. So Lenora currently has 3 series going on. One is incomplete. She's still working on the next book in the series, and she has 2 complete trilogies. So the first trilogy that I do want to talk about is actually the School of Duke series, and the reason why I want to talk about this series more than the other one is because I read this one the first, and this one is actually my favorite series from Lenora. So the first book in the series is actually called What a Difference a Duke Makes, and this one is one of my favorite books from Lenora. I gave her a lot of her books a 5-star rating, but this one definitely has a spot in my heart going forward with all the historical romances. So if you're a fan of a male duke who is a single father who needs a governess, then this is the book for you. This is like the specific trope. What happens is that our hero discovers that he is not just a bachelor, but he's also a father. The one lover that he did take on earlier in his earlier years in his 20s had a secret pregnancy, and then it turns out that she had twins, and then that meant that he had twins once the mother passed away, and now he doesn't know what to do. He knows that he loves the children, but he doesn't know how to take care of them, so he decides that he needs to hire a governess, mostly because the twins are kind of like twin nightmares. They like to cause a lot of trouble, they like to have a lot of pranks, and they like to talk back to adults. And then afterwards, our female heroine is a orphan, and then she is raised to become a governess, and she decides that she wants to take on this role even though like some things happen where she's not eligible to be her governess. She decides to lie to him and say that she is a properly well-trained governess. What they both don't expect is that they both give in to their attraction for each other and they actually like each other. Definitely she tears down the walls that he puts up, and you can also see him helping her adjust to new life here in the big city. And I absolutely just love this romance between them because it felt so natural, it felt so loving, it was definitely well earned in the end, and there's a lot of beautiful scenes in this too as well. I know some of my friends don't actually like children in their historical romance because sometimes they're not written well and they are a little bit more annoying than adding to the plot and adding to the comedy. But I found these 2 children to have a really sad backstory where they were very well developed to the point that you actually start crying when you actually read the emotions the children are going through. So I definitely recommend you to pick this book up. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book in the series is actually called For the Duke Eyes Only. I really like the covers of these first 2 books because I just love rich blues and purples, and I'm pretty sure my thumbnail for this one is going to be a rich blue and a purple too, which I'm very excited to make. But this one follows one of my favorite tropes as well. This is actually one of like the hero's best friend's younger sister trope, and I just love this trope so much. I eat it up like candy. This is the thing that I gobble up. Our 2 main characters were childhood friends. You know, they got along well with each other, but then somewhere in their adulthood and like young adulthood, they turned enemies, and then now they're kind of like working against each other. Our female heroine is very smart. She's actually an archaeologist, which I really like in historical romance, where they have like eclectic jobs, because it's a little more interesting than, you know, being someone rich and having to only have the purpose of marrying. So our main heroine really likes to seek out like different like artifacts, learn about different people's cultures, and really read up on the history of it. Our hero is like kind of like the anti archaeologist. He likes to dig up things, he likes to get the things, and he likes to sell it off for money and kind of just have this very rogue reputation. He also has like a womanizing reputation as well, where he's kind of like always flaunting his sexuality, always having like intercourse with other people, but we don't really see it, but that's just his reputation. And so when they see each other at one of these meetings, he's definitely shocked because only males are allowed to attend these meetings. And now he has right in front of him his best friend's younger sister, who he definitely finds really attractive, dressed up like a boy. And so this is kind of like the romance where they begin, where they kind of go on this treasure hunt and this solving this mystery of like what actually happened, but also them falling in love with each other and kind of getting over like what had stopped them to be friends in the past. And I really enjoyed this one too. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was very, like, the chemistry was just kind of like pouring out of the pages. So I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. So the last book in the series is called One Fine Duke, and this is the book that I actually read during the Historical Romance Readathon, where Lenora was hosting a giveaway with us. I thought that I would give her book a try. It was my first time reading her book, and I picked the last book in one of her series. Although do not be confused, these books can be read as standalone, so you guys can pick up whenever you want to. It's just like, it's fun when you get to see like some characters bleed into other books. But other than that, the plot lines are kind of standalone. So this one follows a girl who is really into spying, and it's mostly because our second novel that I just talked about included some spy and some undercover mission things and like that. So our main heroine is kind of restless. She is really into action. She's really into adventure and mystery solving. So she's definitely not like the normal ladies that we typically see in historical romance and also in the past. So what happens is that she gets herself into trouble too many times. So her uncle or her father figure actually tries to set her up with a suitable marriage for herself in her class, and she is engaged to this guy. But then what happens is that the guy's older brother kind of comes into play, and the guy's older brother is definitely more attracted to her, and she's definitely more attracted to him. But now this is kind of like an opposites attract romance, because I would like to say that she's more carefree, she's more adventurous, and meanwhile he's just following her along just for like the ride and just for like having the fun of it. So this one, at first reading, I actually gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, mostly because when I started reading the book, it was kind of like really silly. It was kind of like not what I was wanting during the time when I read it back in last year. But then this time around, I actually gave a reread, and while I still found some similarities with like the comedic punchlines where it just seemed a little too exaggerated and a little too slapstick, I still enjoyed it a little bit more than I did the first time around, but this one's definitely not one of my favorites. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next series that Lenora Bell actually has is called the Disgraceful Duke series, and this is actually her debut novels with Avon Romance. One of these books is her debut novel, and it's her first series. So I was interested in going back in time and kind of reading her earlier works just to see how much she has improved and what she has originally built her foundation on. So I was really excited to read this one, especially after the last series that I just mentioned hit everything out of the ballpark. So I think this is the first book, but this book is called How the Duke Was Won. So the first book that I think belongs in the series is actually called How the Duke Was Won, and the reason why I think is because I completely forgot how the series order goes, so please forgive me. But this book follows kind of a trope of like lying about your identity and trying to seduce a duke. So basically our main heroine is a illegitimate daughter of this really like rich guy, and then what happens is that her mother is different, but the father is obviously the same. But our main heroine also has a half sister. Then she and her half sister look eerily similar, and they look like almost identical. But what happens is that the half sister can't debut in the season, but then afterwards her mother really wants her to marry this duke. So her mother actually hires our heroine to pretend to be her half sister, and then gets trained to be more like a lady. And then afterwards she gets like a lot of money, and then she can pay off her debts that her family household holds. And then after this is kind of like the romance where she kind of like seduces this duke who doesn't seem like that he's ever interested at all, until like they kind of have some smoking interactions with each other. Now this series is definitely a little bit darker than her other books. I find that this one definitely dealt with more realistic circumstances that did happen in the past. For example, our main heroine is she actually grew up in a brothel, and her mother is actually kind of like an escort, and she sells herself, and she also helps other girls sell themselves for money and to earn their keep. So this one definitely dealt with a little darker topics like this. It definitely didn't fill me with like butterflies as like her other books. So this one I actually gave like, I think around a 3.5 to 4 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but it was still a really good solid debut and a good solid read. So the next book in the series is actually called If I Only Had a Duke, and this one was kind of like a really favorite of mine in the series. This one I think I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It definitely was very close to a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed the plot line, and the plot line is basically our main heroine doesn't want to get married. She does not care for people kind of like trying to seduce her because she has a lot of money. So she wants to really just live peacefully until she turns into like a rightful age to become a spinster. But what happens is that our main hero, who is a duke, who's very arrogant and who's kind of like an a-hole, he basically dances with her at the season, and then that led to her rise in popularity, which definitely was the opposite of what she wanted, because she just really wanted to be a wallflower and kind of just like die out in the background. But now that there all these suitors are coming to her, because why wouldn't they, because like the duke wants her, then there's something really good about her. Her mother actually encourages her to get married even more, and then so much to the point that she's so frustrated that she kind of barges into his house, and then they kind of have like some kind of entanglement where she barters with him, saying that you bring me to Scotland, and then afterwards, like, this is what you owe me because you ruined my chances of escaping quietly. So then now this is kind of like a road trip romance where they both kind of head on to this really grand place, this new country, and then our hero has his own missions in life too, because he's trying to solve a mystery that happened in his childhood, and he's kind of has like a very dark past. So this one I really enjoyed, gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend you to check this one out. So the last book in the series is called Blame It on the Duke, and this one follows kind of like a black sheep in the family trope, or kind of black sheep in society trope. So basically mental illness and anything kind of like different from yourself is obviously like going to ruin your social standing in society. And what happens is that our hero, he noticed that, or not he noticed, but like he knew, and everybody knew, that the males in his house would kind of like descend into madness around a certain point of age. And then so all his life he knew that his grandfather suffered madness, and then his dad suffered madness. So he thinks, and he's very convinced, that he suffered, or he will suffer madness during like and later on in his years. So he punishes himself, and he doesn't really let himself have happiness because he thinks that his world is going to end anyways. So why seek out happiness? Our main heroine, she knows that she doesn't want to marry anybody, but then what happens is that they both kind of have like this fake engagement, fake marriage, fake ruining relationship, so that they both can stay out of the limelight and that nobody can criticize them anymore. They have 1 year to prove to others that they're happily married or happily like in love, and then they can just divorce each other and go on in their separate ways. And then this one was definitely like, it started off really fast because it was hot and steamy really fast, and I wasn't really sure about the pacing. So this one I ended up only giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. Also mostly because towards the end I kind of lost interest into like this whole plot line. So one of the first books in her latest series is called Wallflowers versus Rogues, and I think this one was my first book that I ever read from Lenora this year. So then afterwards, this one really kind of set the bar high for all her other books, mostly because this one just hit it right out of the park. It was a 5 out of 5 stars. Freaking loved it. Definitely would recommend this, and I'm eagerly waiting for her next book in this series that's coming out later on this year. And then I already messaged Lenora about it, and I was like, when is the next book coming out? And she's just like, I'm editing it right now, but please like give me anything, because this one is like phenomenal. It's chef's kiss. So this is basically about a female heroine who is very smart. Once again, she has kind of like a job that's different from other girls that we see in other historical romances. She writes dictionaries, and she has a fascination with words. She really likes to study, and then she's also always in her library. She loves books. And then what happens is that her house, or like her brother's house, is being renovated by none other than our hero, who's kind of like a blue collar male, and he gets our female heroine's attention all the time. Like, our female heroine sworn off like guys because she wanted to be a spinster. She wasn't gonna go marry. She's kind of like older too, so she was already there, and she was kind of gonna give up on finding someone. But then here he comes and he saunters into her library, invading her space. And then this is kind of like the lovely love story of these two. I also really enjoyed this too because she actually inherits a bookstore, and then our hero actually comes and saves the day and helps her renovate the bookstore so that it doesn't fall into pieces. I also really like the character development of Lenora's books. I feel like her characters are always like kind of like stuck in this one route, but then throughout the whole book, they kind of have like this arch where they kind of become a better version of themselves. And our heroine was definitely that. She was silenced a lot and she wasn't heard a lot from what she wanted from her mom. Her mom was very overbearing, so she never could do anything that she wanted, and she was always judged for everything that she was doing. So but then afterwards, towards the end, you kind of see her develop and kind of grow her own voice and have her own voice and speak up whenever she wanted to speak up. So really highly recommend this book to you. This book featured a female heroine who was a little bit diverse in a way. She was born with palsy, so her face is kind of like a little bit, it's not perfect, so like a little bit of her face kind of droops down and you can kind of see it. And then that's why like a lot of the male suitors don't really want to propose to her, because she's different from other girls. She's not the traditional style of beauty. But anyways, that is it for all the Lenora Bell books that she has written and also that I have read. I honestly thought that when I was reading these books, I thought that I was going to read 3 of her books and then make a video out of it. But I took a random hiatus and then I decided to just read all her books, because every time I read one of her books, I just wanted to read the next book that she wrote, because it's just so good and just kind of like a domino effect. So hopefully you guys can pick some of her books up, because they're definitely like a 3 to 5 star rating, majority leaning towards a 4 to 5 star rating. So definitely I feel like you'll enjoy it. But until next time, I'll see you guys again with another historical romance guide. Bye.